Hello, welcome to the podcast AnonX. Today we're embarking on a truly fascinating deep dive into a country often referred to as the land of a million elephants, Laos. We're going to try and peel back the layers of its incredibly rich and sometimes complex history, right from its ancient beginnings up to its modern state.
That's right. And our sources for this, well, they cover a huge timeline. We're looking at the earliest human settlements, moving right through to the establishment of the Lao People's Democratic Republic in 1975. And crucially, how its, turbulent past continues to shape its present and maybe even its future. Our mission really is to pull out the most important insights, connect those historical dots for you, and hopefully give you a richer understanding of this remarkable nation.
Okay, so to really get Laos today, we need to go way back. We're talking tens of thousands of years, right? Before any kingdoms. What do we actually know about those very first inhabitants? What are the whispers from archaeology telling us?
Yeah, it's a history that runs incredibly deep. We're talking human presence dating back at least 50,000 years in the area that's now Laos. And evidence of farming, that pops up maybe around 5,000 years ago. This whole region actually spilling over into northeast Thailand, too. It holds some of the oldest examples we have of Bronze Age culture anywhere in Southeast Asia.
Wow. Okay, and when you mention ancient mysteries, I guess the Plain of Jars has to come up. It sounds almost mythical.
Oh, it absolutely does. It's quite something. Up on the Shangklong Plateau, archaeologists have found over 300 of these jar fields, and inside them, about 3,000 massive stone jars. We're not talking small pots here, some weigh up to 7 tons.
7 tons. Goodness.
Yeah. Now, their exact purpose, well, that's still debated, still fascinating. But human remains have been found nearby, which strongly suggests they were funerary urns. A burial practice that fits with other Bronze Age cultures we see in the region.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the mystery gets deeper with the local legends. Some stories say giants built them, maybe to store grain. Others talk about a 6th century chief, Kunjoam, who supposedly used them to make huge amounts of rice wine for a victory party. What's really cool is how these ancient sites still spark the imagination today, connecting that deep past with modern folklore.
So we got these ancient people, these massive mysterious jars. How does the picture start to change? When do distinct ethnic groups begin shaping the landscape?
Right. A really key moment is the migration of Thai groups. Starting around the 8th century AD, these people began moving down from southern China. It was a slow process, but persistent. They followed rivers like the Nam U and Nam Khan, eventually reaching the big one, the Mekong.
And they weren't moving into an empty land, presumably.
No, exactly. These Thai Lao ancestors, they didn't arrive in a vacuum. They gradually displaced the existing Mon Khmer peoples, people who are now often known as the Lao Tung, or the Upland Lao. And this dynamic, the lowland Thai Lao expanding and the highland Mon Khmer being displaced, it's really fundamental to understanding Laos's diverse ethnic makeup even now.
That's interesting how you mentioned power evolving, too. It wasn't like modern countries with fixed borders back then.
Not at all. These early princely fiefdoms, which were often linked to quite advanced cultures like Lan Xang with their pottery and bronze, they weren't static. Historians often talk about them forming mandalas.
Mandalas?
Yeah, think of them as expanding and contracting spheres of influence rather than the neat lines on a map we think of today. Power was more fluid. Southern Laos, for example, especially around Champasak, it fell pretty heavily under the influence of the big Khmer Empire to the south.
Okay.
Chinese texts from around the 5th century even mention a kingdom called Chenla in that area, and that's where you find the UNESCO site of Wat Phu now, a stunning temple complex.
Right, I've heard of Wat Phu.
It's got incredible 7th to 12th century Khmer architecture, bits of ancient cities, even Hindu statues and Sanskrit inscriptions. It really shows those deep cultural and political links across the whole region back then.
So from these kind of shifting power centers, these mandalas, we eventually get something more unified. That brings us, I guess, to the 14th century and the rise of Lan Xang, the kingdom of a million elephants under the white parasol. That sounds like a major turning point.
It absolutely was a really pivotal moment. This was a genuinely prosperous time for Laos, kind of the foundation stone for the Lao nation. It was founded in 1353 by Prince Ngum. He's still revered today as the father of the Lao people.
Ngum.
He'd actually been exiled to the Khmer Empire, but he came back with Khmer military backing, which was crucial. And he managed to unify these huge territories along the Mekong places like Vientiane, Xinjiang, and Luang Prabang, which was called Shandong Shangthong back then.
So he didn't just conquer land, he brought something else.
Yes, very much so. He didn't just unify territory, he also introduced Theravada Buddhism as the state religion. And he brought the revered Phra Bang Buddha image from the Khmer court.
The Phra Bang. That sounds important.
Hugely important. It quickly became more than just a religious icon. It was a powerful symbol of the state, of legitimacy, the very soul of the unified Lao kingdom. And it's what gave the new capital its name, Luang Prabang, meaning Great Phra Bang.
And Lan Xang had its golden age, didn't it? Especially under King Surinyavongsa. But like you often see with empires, that peak couldn't last forever. What started to go wrong? What led to it breaking apart?
Yeah, unfortunately, the seeds of its decline were probably sown when King Surinyavongsa died in the early 18th century. His death led to pretty intense power struggles, royals, nobles, all vying for control. This really weakened the central government, created inconsistencies, and ultimately, Lan Xang fractured.
Fractured
Into three separate, much weaker kingdoms, Luang Prabang up north, Vientiane in the center, and Champasak down south. And each one was now pretty vulnerable, dealing with its own internal splits and, crucially, huge pressure from more powerful neighbors.
Right, that internal division must have been an invitation. And Siam or Thailand stepped in.
They did. By 1779, the powerful Siamese kingdom under King Taksin had conquered all three of those Lao kingdoms. They weren't annexed outright, but reduced to vassal states. They had to pay tribute to Siam. It was a massive shift in Laos's independence.
And wasn't there a major rebellion against Siamese rule?
Yes, a really significant and, well, tragic episode. King Anawang of Vientiane tried to break free and regain full independence between 1826 and 1829.
But it didn't succeed.
No, tragically it failed. The Siamese response was brutal. They utterly destroyed Vientiane walls, homes, temples, plundered everything. Anawang himself was captured, taken to Bangkok, and died there in captivity.
How awful.
And what's really telling is how this event is remembered so differently in Laos and Thailand even today. For the Lao, Anawang is often seen as a nationalist hero, a symbol of defiance. For the Thais, it's often framed more as suppressing a rebellious vassal. This difference in historical narrative, it really highlights the complex, sometimes tense relationship between the two countries.
This Laos is fractured, weakened under Siamese influence. And then a completely new power arrives on the scene. The French, 1893, the Franco-Siamese War, and Laos becomes part of French Indochina. That must have changed everything.
Oh, profoundly. French colonial rule reshaped Laos in almost every way imaginable. They used that classic divide and rule strategy. Often they brought in Vietnamese officials who already had some experience with French systems to run trade and administration within Laos.
Which probably didn't help relations between Lao and Vietnamese people.
No, it certainly created friction. And the French even redrew boundaries, transferring some traditionally Lao territory over to Vietnam, setting up future disputes and resentments. Economically, it was harsh. They brought in a land lease system, often displacing Lao farmers as land went cheaply or even freely to French colonists.
In taxes, I imagine.
Excessive taxes on almost everything. Land tax, head tax, taxes on salt, wine, even opium, which became a big money spinner for the colonial government, but caused immense hardship for ordinary Lao people.
So a heavy hand economically and politically. Did that extend into culture and identity too? What about education?
Absolutely. Education was a key tool for their assimilation policy. They largely sidelined, even suppressed, local Lao culture and the traditional Buddhist education system. Instead, they promoted French language, French values. Modern schooling was mostly for the Lao elite, the idea being to create a class that would serve the French administration.
Undermining the existing Buddhist culture.
Directly challenging it, yes. For centuries, Buddhist temples had been the heart of education and community life. Now, while the French kept the king of Luang Prabang in place, sort of symbolically, for indirect rule.
A figurehead.
Essentially, the real power lay with the French commissioners and provincial officials. It looked like local rule on the surface, but control was firmly French, deeply changing how Laos was governed and how its society worked.
Then the 20th century rolls on, bringing even more turmoil. World War II, Japanese occupation for a time, and the French come back in 1946. But things weren't just going back to how they were they?
No, that post-war period was totally different. Laos did gain independence, but gradually, and it immediately got sucked into the vortex of the Cold War. The country basically became a proxy battleground. You had communist influences, right-wing influences, both backed by outside powers fighting for control. This led to terrible internal conflict, a devastating civil war, which got completely entangled with the much larger Vietnam War next door.
It seems like such a paradox, though. How did Laos, relatively small, landlocked, maybe not as economically powerful, become so central to this huge global conflict?
That's a really critical question. It boils down to geography, mainly. Laos's rugged terrain and its long border with North Vietnam made it strategically vital for the North Vietnamese during the Vietnam War.
The Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Exactly.
Wow.
That crucial network of supply routes snaked right through eastern Laos. It let North Vietnam move troops and supplies down into South Vietnam, bypassing the main border. Because it was so important, the U.S. got heavily involved. Huge amounts of aid went to the Royal Lao government. And of course, the infamous Secret War, this massive bombing campaign against the Pathet Lao communist movement and their North Vietnamese allies.
Making Laos the most heavily bombed country ever per person.
Tragically, yes. And the Pathet Lao themselves, they were established back in 1950, growing out of the anti-French Laoisara movement. They became very closely linked with the North Vietnamese Viet Minh. It was pragmatic, shared enemy, shared ideology in many ways. But their reliance on Vietnamese support for organization, weapons, even leadership also fueled the internal divisions within Laos that led to the Civil War. The U.S. saw it all through the lens of the domino effect, fear that if Laos fell to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia would follow. So they intervened, prolonging the agony for the Lao people.
So this long, devastating civil war eventually moves towards an endgame, especially after the U.S. pulls out of Vietnam with the Paris Peace Accords in '73. The Pathet Lao signed a ceasefire with the government then.
They did. That ceasefire set the stage for the final shift in power. By 1975, the Pathet Lao effectively controlled most of the country. The momentum was just unstoppable. On November 21st, 1975, you had student movements in Vientiane starting to demand an end to the monarchy altogether. People were disillusioned with the U.S.-backed royal government.
And then the final collapse.
Just days later, December 2nd, 1975, the royal Lao government officially collapsed. The monarchy was abolished. King Sisavangapana and his family were arrested, sent to re-education camps, and tragically died there under mysterious circumstances. It was the absolute end of centuries of monarchy in Laos.
And in its place, the Lao People's Democratic Republic is established, run by the Communist Lao People's Revolutionary Party, a fundamental change to one-party rule. How did that shape the country immediately after and then looking forward?
Well, the immediate aftermath, the establishment of the Lao PDR, it marked the start of the communist era. Initially, the country faced pretty severe international isolation and serious economic hardship. This actually led to a significant wave of emigration, many people fleeing the new regime.
But things didn't stay completely closed off forever.
No. In 1986, Laos started its own economic reforms called the New Economic Mechanism, kind of their version of Doi Moi in Vietnam or the reforms in China. It was a pragmatic shift. The slogan was turning battlegrounds into marketplaces. It meant opening up the economy, allowing private business, embracing market ideas, even while keeping the socialist political structure. And that move was really crucial for Laos to start integrating back into the regional and global economy.
How did all this affect relations with neighbors, especially Thailand, given that complex history we talked about?
Yeah, the relationship with Thailand remained complex. They went from those old fluid mandala dynamics to having modern border disputes, like over some villages in 1984. It's still fascinating how Thai and Lao historians interpret their shared pre-colonial past so differently. Those national narratives persist.
And the legacy of the war, like the Hmong people.
That's been a really difficult ongoing issue. The situation of displaced Hmong people who sided with the U.S. during the war is viewed very differently. Sometimes as refugees needing help, sometimes by Laos or Thailand as potential insurgents. It's complicated. But regional cooperation has become more important. Laos joined ASEAN in 1997. And that framework, ASEAN, it helps address some of these issues, encourages economic ties, provides a platform for diplomacy, and generally gives Laos a stronger voice regionally.
So despite all that upheaval, the core Lao culture survived. What does that look like today, and what's the focus for the future? You mentioned development projects.
Absolutely. Laos is still predominantly Buddhist, and its cultural heritage is incredibly rich and vibrant. It's interesting, they use the Gregorian calendar for business, like us, but a traditional lunar calendar still governs all the many holidays and festivals. It shows that blend of old and new.
Right.
Looking forward, yeah, economic development is a huge focus. Tourism is growing, hydropower is a major industry, sometimes controversial, and big infrastructure projects. The China-Laos Railway is the massive one, finished in 2021.
Connecting China right through to Vientiane.
Exactly. The hope is it transforms Laos from being landlocked to land-linked. A hub connecting China with Southeast Asia, boosting trade, tourism, everything.
But progress like that usually comes with challenges too. What are the main hurdles Laos faces now?
That's true. There are significant economic challenges. Foreign debt is a big one, partly linked to funding these huge infrastructure projects. Environmental concerns are also really pressing, especially the impact of all the hydropower dams on the Mekong River's ecosystem and the people who depend on it.
A balancing act, then.
Very much so. Balancing that drive for economic growth with protecting the environment and also making sure the benefits of development actually reach the diverse population across the country. Those are the key challenges. Understanding all these pieces, the deep history, the wars, the modern ambitions, the challenge, it's all key to appreciating the resilience and the really unique identity of Laos and its people.
What an absolutely incredible journey through Laos's past. From those ancient roots, the Great Kingdom, the impacts of colonialism, war, revolution, right up to the modern Lao People's Democratic Republic.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? In today's interconnected world, how does a nation like Laos, with such a complex, often difficult history, caught between powerful neighbors for so long? How does it forge its own unique path forward? How does it navigate all those historical legacies while trying to shape its own future? That's something for you, our listener, to perhaps ponder.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.